All yours now. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, this question for Anil sir. I guess you put it about the CFTs which are now coming in when we have a cross-functional team of consultants and the client-side guys who are having an experience. But don't you think that at this particular point of time, initially when a team used to comprise of only consultants, they used to give a particular answer. But now more and more CFTs are there, then there is a more of an ego clash between the client side and the consultant, because the client is also well prepared because he has a rich experience. Similar as a consultant. The consultant has a diverse experience. At that particular point of time when you are going for VCS or root cause analysis, at that particular point you don't guys face a ego clash. Okay, now this is what we face, this is what we generally do, and then you say that oh, this is what we have come across with different companies. What exactly do you do?
See, in one sense, it is no different from a CFT within a company. So when you have a planning function interacting with some other function, a line function in the company, the same kind of issues come up, right? The egos come up anyway. You are talking to your colleague, ego comes up. So that is unavoidable. In CFTs with consultant, I think sometimes it is less because you are not jockeying within the organization for some power. You know he's an outside guy who's going to help you. Besides the clash of ego in terms of who knows more, actually is not threatening you in any way. So I see that to be a less of an issue, and there are more like the focus is more on solving the problem because they know there is a finite time the consultant is going to be here, and they need to get an output from him. So it is much better. The cross-functional teams within an organization can be much worse in fact.
Interesting. Yes, please, right at the back. One second.
Like we learned that you all have first worked in some of the specialist domains and then gone to consulting. So is this a good idea to work either in some general management or strategy roles before moving to consulting?
I think there's no right or wrong answer. It could, it depends on your own experience. There are enough experiences of people who got into strategy consulting firm and they found the experience great. And there are many people who work in an industry, specialize, and then were able to join a consulting firm laterally. In my opinion, I think the latter is better because you get to see the world, you understand industry, you understand how things work. I still believe that without having that first-hand knowledge of working in an industry or a company, just being able to advise and consult to any other company, that still somehow doesn't make sense to me. I know the McKinseys and the BCGs of the world still want freshers because they want to mold you the way they are, with their thinking, their mindsets, and that's how they have done so well, and they are obviously great companies. But somehow that doesn't gel with my understanding. I believe that you need to go out in the market, understand, learn. It's about getting WorkX and then doing an MBA or doing an MBA without any WorkX, right? And I think getting WorkX and doing an MBA, which I didn't do, probably would have made more sense.
Got to add something like this.
Yeah, I think I concur with what he says because I did both. I mean, I had some WorkX and did my MBA. I also did work before I did my moved into consulting. I think it's important, and I think you asked a question whether you could do general management or strategy roles. I think those are initially very difficult to get in when you get into industry as a starting role for freshers. So I think it's important that you get some exposure to some line functions initially because that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of any business. So I think that's where you get the experience, and then probably yes, if you do get a stint at a staff function, that's well and good, and then you can look at moving into something in consulting.
Okay, good. Next.
So, I have a question to Mr. Anil. Sir, since you drove up the point on small and medium price enterprises, companies, how are the expectations different from the higher end companies? Can you please elaborate on this?
This is a good question, and I think the expectations are totally different. And when you work in a large company, they have a lot of professional managers with a lot of knowledge and systems and processes already there. They are looking at most of the time on solving a specific problem. or they are looking for a transformation or something like that, or they are trying a new business. But a SME as a whole, they are looking to develop their capabilities all around. So, and in the SME, you will be working directly with the decision makers all the time. You will be virtually sitting with him. In the case of a large organization, it may not be the same. They will be probably making you sit with some mid-level managers who are running the project, and you might be having a senior manager comes once in a while and review what's going on. There are a few cases where you will have a very hands-on top management working on the project also, but that is not the case generally. So it's a very different experience. In the first case, when you're working with a large company, it's your antecedents and everything that else counts. In the second case, it's just the comfort with the client that counts. If you're comfortable with that guy who's owning that 200 crore company or 100 crore company, that's all that counts. Rest everything follows. Here it is completely different. So I think the expectations and the way you have to mold is completely different that way. Does that answer your question, by the way?
Yes, ma'am. Just pass the mic to her.
Just added to this question, what are the problems that you face while consulting for the SME industry?
Firstly, they don't want to pay. No, it's not, I'm not joking. I mean, see, I don't know what is the starting salary today, but if you go to most of these SMEs, most senior managers are not paid your starting salaries. Now you can think of their mindset and which kind of a place they are in. They are used to not delegating authority because their entire business depends upon it. Because in their minds they think, if I teach my person how to do business, why will he work for me tomorrow? He will go and work on his own. Okay, there's a completely different setup and aspect. So dealing with them and talking to them is completely different. And that is one problem. The second problem is when you go to a large company, okay, you have a lot of people where you can interact with and figure out things when talking to them. In here, there is literally nothing. You will be talking to just one guy at a time, or maybe two people at maximum. And between that, you have to figure out everything.
We are hearing about the digitization and big data coming up from the last 2 to 3 years. How this actually impacted the consulting business?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think there's a lot of emphasis on that, and then I think we see a lot of work in terms of analytics coming up in the consulting domain. So there's more predictive analytics rather than just historical stuff. There is also some historical related analytics also coming out. We're also seeing trends in audit analytics as well. This predictive analytics, and there's also a new stream. I think we see a lot more conversation around is in terms of applications to be able to look at your predictive analysis and also come back and give you a feedback whether that decision making, finally based on facts, on hindsight was it the right decision and the correcting ability. So there is a lot more emphasis on that, and I think a lot of emphasis. I think people are looking at social media feeds and especially to get ideas from customer insights and what the expectations is from the market. So there are a lot of initiatives around that which you tend to see. We also see a lot of CFOs actually looking at trying to see how well they can actually make use of these analytics to be a better support to the business. So that's an area of interest.
Good evening to all. My question is for all. My question is, lately a lot of firms have been trying their hands in education industry. Given that change is very difficult to implement in such an industry, where do you see the scope of consultants?
You're asking about consultants in education?
Yes, for education.
Well, none of them have been working in that domain, but do you have any ideas about that? I mean, you have friends or colleagues or somebody who might be working in that? I know PwC has a pretty big education practice.
I'm not conversant with the kind of projects they do, but I think the little I know, they've been largely more technological implementations from what I've understood. So sorry, I don't have too much information on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
I know there are a lot of people looking at the education industry for consulting opportunities, but education institutions are quite, I mean, you folks have had some first-hand experience dealing with education institutions. So, they don't, they're not that easy to work with. So, I don't know, I think it's a slow process of trying to get involved. But clearly it's a very large industry, and In a country like India, it's also a very important industry. So I'm sure we're going to see much more consulting happening in that domain.
Thank you so much.
Yes, anybody else? Any other questions, comments, observations?
My question is like, now a problem happened and we are providing a reactive solution. When a problem happened and we are solving a solution. Do you see a trend of proactive solutions wherein in 2008, the financial risk management in banks is one of the things being made now. If a solution being framework are being brought, selling across banks or institutions, do you think this trend could happen in future? The problem now, most of the institutions they come up with an issue wherein this consultant will go and solve a particular issue or provide a solution. A proactive solution, like suppose a industry-wide in 2008, at the hindsight, we found that the risk management in banks is a key issue. Wherein they would have solved this issue in 2010 or something, framework being or Basel norms being built. If a solution is built and it can be sold across institutions, across organizations, kind of proactive solution, do you think this trend could happen?
Yeah, so let me answer that question, and I'm not going to take the example of the financial crisis because that's highly debatable, but the answer is yes. So right now, many consulting firms are guilty of reacting to a problem. Some problem happens, the client calls us and we go and solve it. When we go and ask them, what can we do more for you? This is what they say. Can you create a model which will help me understand how things will be in the next 2-3 years? And I can put in place best practices or things which will not lead to this problem. So they need more predictive analytics, what Akhila was talking about earlier. For example, let me talk about the HR industry. Right? For them, the biggest issue is that right now, when I lose people, I come to you and I ask you, how do I manage attrition? But can you tell me how will attrition look like over the next 3 years so I can put in place a model or a mechanism to do staffing and retention, keeping in mind what will happen. So to your point, clients want that predictive sort of consulting where they can preempt problems and hence put in mechanisms rather than look at knee-jerk reactions. Are we able to do it? Well, not yet. A lot of work has to still to be done to build those models, test them and see how they work. But that definitely will be something in the future.
One kind of subset of that is, I think you see certain amount of regulation-driven consulting happening. Then you do find consulting firms coming up with some kind of a standardized product or approach. Take the example of the changes in the Companies Act which require compulsory CSR. Now you see a lot of consulting firms going with offerings to companies, much more proactively, not waiting for the company to call them, going to the company and saying, we know you are going to have this problem now. How do you go about allocating your resources for CSR? Where do you put that 2% of the profits? So now we have this solution, we have this framework, are you interested? So you do have some of that kind of thing happening, but it's often when there's some change which is identifiable and therefore people come up with a solution around that. That's also one of the possible approaches. Right?
From a practical perspective, what happens is, you see most of the companies call in help. It's calling in help, right? Consultant. We call in help mostly when you are distressed or you are having a problem. That is the genesis of how you start with it. But there are triggers in a company's history when sometimes they call on help without having a problem. And these are typically triggered with changes in management, a new CEO coming over, a new president coming over, and he wants to leave his mark on the company. So from a practical perspective, this happens. Those proactive things happen only early in the life of a person. It's very rarely that it happens later in the life. So 80-90% of the projects that you will see in consultings are always a call for help. They are never proactive. So, and that is going to remain like that for a long time to come. Industry-wide thing, like for example, today Government of India is one of the biggest consumer of consultancy services. Anywhere you go, there are 30-40 bright consultants trying to figure out policies for India for the next 20 years. So that is when a new Prime Minister has come in, he is getting the best of talents from the consultants to try and figure out what should be done. We will have those proactive things as well.
Do you see any change in trend in the knowledge management within the industry, within the consulting firms? I mean, capturing each and every solution we provide to clients, and do we rework after coming back from the assignment? Example, I mean, in a year, getting a all consultants won't get a project for all the 12 months. So there will be some free time wherein between projects or between breaks.
Maybe Akila or Rupam, maybe you should take it. What's the status of knowledge management in your organizations?
I think it's generally there's a fair amount of rigor to that. So there is usually there are case studies and citations prepared for whatever work is being done, and for some large projects, there are knowledge sessions within teams to share that knowledge by people who work on the project, so others can also learn. You have certain templates and deliverables. You can redact them and sanitize them so that they can also be used in future other clients' engagements as well. So there is a fair amount of churn within the teams, and we also end up there's usually a general, also at firm level there is a repository as well for various projects. So which kind of you can do a sort of an index search and kind of get what's happened there, and you can always reach out to those other cross-functional teams, other teams, in case you need some further information, especially if it's a client work. You're going to a client where somebody else has worked, some other competency or team has worked before, so you can always reach out, get some idea about what went right there, what didn't, and use that knowledge as well. Prepare for your meetings or also in your projects as well.
Would add something?
I think that sort of links back to the topic that we were speaking about, that how has information access changed consulting. So this is one aspect. Because information access and knowledge management within the organization, within the consulting firm has undergone a change. So now you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel every time. You have models, you have case studies, you have information available, not only within different practices in the same country, but in 100 locations across the world for all consulting firms. And they are all on a SharePoint or a sort of a in-house portal. You can log in and get best practices from Nigeria to Poland to Switzerland to Europe and be able to implement those, because even clients want best practices across the world, not only specific to India as they become smarter. So you're able to access the information across and use it for your pitches, your project. That helps a lot. And then secondly, you don't have to start from scratch. If you've got a project for a telecom firm which is of this size, of this nature, you can shoot off a mail across the world and somewhere would have done a project similarly. You can get access to that. That really helps your job a lot, because you don't have to start all over again. You have information and knowledge which can help in a client project right from the start.
Okay, I think we should slowly start winding up. So let's take the last maybe couple of questions here. Go ahead. Right here, there's one right here.
The point you made, the same benefit is with the client also. Now, they have also the access to the information. If the problem they are facing, the problem they might come up with, other companies also face. So they can take an example. Why they should go to the consultant first?
I think the constraint is much of the information is not publicly available, right? A similar company going through a similar problem, the kind of solution you might have faced may not be available. So here what Rupak and I were both talking about is within the country firm as well as inter-firm upworks and network firms, where you can get information from your other colleagues who have actually worked on similar projects. So that kind of knowledge, and you can even bring in some SMEs for your project if the need so be. So clients may be aware of something might have to handle. Then normally the questions would be, what have you seen others do and what other best practices can you bring in? But I think the kind of probably an inside view you may not be able to get, because much of that would be privy information.
Yeah, I mean, if you take an example of, say, an ICICI bank, they may have information in different branches, but they can't go to an HDFC bank or a Kotak bank and ask for information because it's not the same bank. They won't share, it's not publicly available. And this may be relevant for a large multi-business group, for example, say Aditya Birla Group, because they have different businesses. So Aditya Birla Chemicals can go to Aditya Birla Finance and ask them, but that usually doesn't happen because they work in silos. also because solutions tend to be specific to an industry. So what may have worked for Aditya Birla Financial Services may not necessarily work for the Carbon Black business.
Okay, so let's come to the last one or two, maybe two questions maximum. So, yeah, you just choose a couple of people here.
Hello. So in case of an economic slowdown or in a situation where most of the companies are trying to cut costs, how do consulting firms create more business?
What do consultants do in a slowdown? One of you had better take it. Rupang, maybe.
What was the last part of the question? What do consultants do in a slowdown?
How do consulting firms create more business in an economic slowdown or case where most of the companies are trying to cut costs?
Okay, so I was part of one slowdown which hit us in 2009. It was a bad slowdown. One thing is you look for jobs outside. Number two, people go for further studies. So 2009 saw many people in my company go to Chicago or Harvard for a second MBA because it's like, what's the point, right? You're going to be struggling to find a job. Let's just utilize and go for a second MBA. But on the work side, I think basically what you have to do is you have to sell more. So, you know, for a long time, consulting was you just wait for business to walk in and you should sort of do it and, you know, everybody's happy. When business is tough, a lot of your time is spent on business development, cold calling, focusing on client management than just doing project work. When the times are good, you spend more time on project delivery because the work is walking through the doors. In a difficult time, it changes completely. I remember in 2009, we were doing 70% time spent on business development, going to clients we had never worked with before, moving to SME, MME segments who we thought were doing well, rather than the fancy multinational companies who were completely broke. So you have to change your strategies, change your segment, try and sell things which will do well. For example, in HR consulting, we were not talking about compensation, we were talking about how to fire people, how to tell companies how to successfully fire people. So you have to change your solutions completely. You just have to work different strategies when the time is difficult.
And I think you have to be very innovative with your pricing. I think at that point, because that's a lot of pressure, and a lot of the projects, like you said, filing, and a lot of them are cost management kind of projects which tend to come up at all. So, and then they usually tend to be associated with, like I think Rupam mentioned it earlier, it tends to be an outcome-based kind of a project. So you have to change the way you work and the way you, and probably if you have to develop certain other skill sets, you invest in that to be able to do that. And obviously, and you have to price it smartly so that you get a foot in the door.
Okay, let's take the last question.
Good evening, sir. My question is open to all. So far we have seen is consulting is mostly a data driven, be it raw data from the company or using the prediction using the analytics. But what I want to ask, there are some scope of assumptions also, because especially in the large acquisitions and mergers, especially we see of the Facebook and the WhatsApp. Now, what amount will she go for acquiring a company? Should we be able to recover it or not? Now, if you see the WhatsApp, there is no much scope of advertisement. Then whether Facebook would able to extract, that big amount that they have invested. So is there something with assumption, like there might be some companies which are coming which might be close competitors to WhatsApp in the near future, and might be WhatsApp not to be able to compete with that. So what's the assumption behind all these things? Is there some data behind it, or is there some assumption?
I was reading something the other day about how it's going to take 1,000 years to recover the investment in WhatsApp or something. So I don't know. There could be other. I don't want to preempt them. There could be other issues as well, right? What happens if a competitor gets hold of WhatsApp? Or what happens if WhatsApp becomes a direct competitor to you? So sometimes preemption and stopping other people could be putting a very large value on something, even though you might not be seeing cash flow. Right? Leave it to them to take a call on that.
Try to answer this in one way, and they will bring more perspective to this. It depends on the kind of work you are doing. If a client is calling you to solve a particular problem, then you are more focused on that subject and that data and doing things. but there are a lot of general consulting assignments. Say for example, as I said, Aditya Birla Group is wanting to diversify into a new field. At that time, they do a de novo thinking about it. They call in assumptions. Consulting also brings in data. So you marry assumptions, market realities, knowledge, data, everything, and try to figure out something whether it is a good thing to do or not, what kind of growth can be there, and so on. So it depends, and you will get both the sides of the coin. And sometimes the question last time from the gentleman was that about the downtime, what do you do during downtime? I would like to add what Rupan said. He said personally about consultants going to study. I think some of the best work that comes from consultancy is during the downtime, because people are free to do more work on creating approaches, methodologies, sharpening their skill sets and everything else. Some of the best reports I have seen in telecom industry are when the telecom industry was down. That means the people have been able to spend more quality time trying to do things. So it all works out somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think just add on to what Anil said. I think lot of consulting, especially I think I would say a lot of management consulting work doesn't necessarily have to be data driven. Like you could look at, let's say probably your voice growth, you want to look at restructuring your structure. So that's not really data driven. It's also some amount of foresight and where you want to see and where you see yourself company being, and obviously there's some amount of prognosis you're doing. So there are things like that which happen as well. So I think it needs to, I mean, there is obviously some amount of historical information and data which you will rely on for anything, but ultimately it could be a combination of both, and obviously ultimately applying common sense to figure out solutions.
I think consulting will work on assumptions, and some of them are easier to make than others. I mean, if you take the example of regulatory consulting, it's easy to assume that given the situation that the global economy has seen, regulation will be playing an important role for the next 7 to 8 years or even longer. So any kind of consulting around that, what banks are doing right now will remain relevant. So it's easy. I mean, within HR consulting, it's also fairly easy because India's population is growing, right? So there'll be enough people and companies will have people issues. So it's smart enough to invest. We do compensation consulting. Assumption is money will be important to everybody. So again, it's a simple one to make. In some cases, the assumptions are a little bit more technical. You have to think through. Some of them are fairly straightforward, and they sort of end up giving you the answer straight away.
Okay, great. So I think let's just maybe conclude now with some final remarks from all the panelists. So Rupank, as you kind of lead these guys this evening, any final thoughts you want to leave with them on consulting, how they should be looking at their careers if they're interested in anything which you think wasn't covered in the discussion, or some thought you would like to leave with them?
I think the fact is that when you sit on placement day, things don't always go as per plan. So you may want to be in a certain segment, in a certain area, in a certain job. It's very strong possibility that may or may not happen. So make the best of whatever you get. And I think don't be too hung up on, getting into a very glamorous sector like consulting. It all sounds good from outside, but believe me, it's like the same kind of work which you do in any other industry. And end of the day, wherever you are able to bring in your skill sets and able to bring in what you are good at, I think follow that sector rather than following the herd mentality. At least in our time, 10 years back, we were still not very innovative. We used to still follow what everybody was doing. Oh, okay, so consulting is important, we'll all try for it. Okay, banking is important, we'll all try for it. We didn't really go for what really was important to us or what I felt good doing. I think you have many more options now. You can get into media, you can get into education, you can get into communication. The entire diaspora is open. So do something which you like doing rather than following the herd mentality is what I would advise you to do.
Akira?
I think we covered most of the points, and I just think I think today I just had a slightly different view from this. Rupan saying that I think today you actually have a lot more exposure. Like there's so much social media influence, I think, which we didn't have, and I think it's very easy to get swayed by popular opinion and the herd mentality to just jump onto the bandwagon. So I think it's important that you are able to get that perspective, step a little back and see, and sometimes try to see, not things from a very short perspective, but something that will probably work in the longer run. So sometimes the initial thing might be tough, but then may eventually pay in the longer run. So try to get that perspective. It's tough, but because there's a lot of outside influence. But I think that might help chart your own ways.
Anil.
I would say something more generic, and I would say that don't go into your jobs after you've done your MBA with any preconceived notions. Go with an open mind, enjoy the journey. I think we will discover what we like and what we don't like as we work. Today we might think we love something or we don't love something, but you might turn out to be completely wrong. I mean, when I went into Reliance, and I was hired to lead an SBU, but the day I landed, Dr. Chandra, the head of HR, called me aside and said, I think we wanted to do something different today. And I was sad. But it turns out it was something great and I love doing it. So just go with an open mind, enjoy the journey. That's the most important thing. And as you mature, you will figure out what you love. And I think probably that will be a better time for you to actually cement on what you want to do ahead in your life. So just have an open mind and enjoy.
Okay, I don't think I want to add anything more to that except to thank all the three panelists. I'm sure they had many options on a weekday evening rather than coming all the way to Navi Mumbai to spend their time with us. So let me thank all three of them for doing that. I think certainly we are all the wiser for it. I at least learned several new things about consulting. I'm sure many of you did as well. So please give careful thought to all the inputs that they give and let's see if we can make some better decisions as a result of that. Once again, thanks a lot. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you everybody. And just to add, I am not from far away. I live just 1 kilometer down the road. So if you need my help ever, I am available.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and I think this is a very good interactive session as well. And please do feel free to keep in touch if you require anything or anything.
I won't repeat all that. I'm just going to say all the best for your placements.
On behalf of all of us, I would like to thank our panelists for their insights. We had a very knowledgeable discussion. We got to know the qualities of a good consultant, what are the expectations from a consultant in today's world, how consulting on a whole is changing, whether one should be a generalist or a specialist, differences in consulting for a small and bigger firm. I am sure the insights would really help us a lot in our careers ahead. I would now request Director Sir to present a small token of appreciation to our esteemed panelists. Thank you, everyone.